Hello and welcome everyone to this demo session on SAP UI5 and Fiori Training. My name is Anubhav and I'm been training on SAP World since last 16 plus of years. I'm been working on SAP Fiori projects since last 5 years with more than 100 odd implementations of different types of Fiori applications with more than 25 Fiori projects, end-to-end projects, including about 7 to 8 different countries I have worked with, and with almost every multinational company, large corporations, small corporations, companies which are product-based, or the solutions which are product-based solutions or service-based solutions. And all of this experience is mixed up together and presented in front of you as part of this training, together with the core concepts of UI5, Fiori, Gateway, and OData. In this particular course, we will be talking about the latest concepts on development of SAP UI5 right from the beginning, without any prerequisite. Yes, you heard it correct. There is no prerequisite to learn this course, and we will not be doing any copy paste of code. As you already have seen my demo videos on YouTube, we will have zero copy paste as part of this course when we will be going through this particular session. So let's talk about who is this course for. This course is mainly for everyone who willing to become an UI5 or a UX developer with SAP UI5 and Fiori technology. So mainly the core attendees of this course would be developers who are either both front-end or back-end developers. Either you're an ABAP developer or web developer working on classical ABAP technologies, or like WebInfo or BSP or portal development. So you've been doing all these kind of developments in the past in your career, in your ABAP career, or in your SAP-based career, and this is where now you can also switch to this new UX technology called Fiori. Now, UX designers who aspire to become a developer, they have zero programming knowledge, just have more or less a designing knowledge, where you can just use some tools to design applications, but yet you are not sure how to develop an application end to end and deliver it to the end user. That also can be another candidate or participant for this course. We will, as I mentioned, have zero prerequisite to understand this UI5 and Fiori. Functional consultants, yes, this is the right time for functional consultants to also switch to SAP UI5 based development, because you are not getting too much of opportunities, that not enough opportunities in the market at this point of time for you, and you're confused what to do, because nowadays with S4 HANA everything is simplified and you're not getting the kind of roles and expected positions in your organization to move ahead. Then Scrum leads and program experts, managers. Of course, many times, many of you are working in the lead position where you don't have much of technicality expertise, but yes, you want to plan things better. You also need to know what your developers are discussing, at what level are they discussing. At times, it becomes very difficult for you to plan things, because sometimes a developer give you an estimate of, let's say, 1 week to complete a task. It's just a task for changing the label of a button, and they give you 100 excuses for that. So if you know the technology better, of course, you can plan things better. You can also guide your developers in the team to do things in the right way. You can conduct different types of code reviews and review checklists you can compare it with, because you also yourself have a good understanding about technology, and nobody can easily make fool of you. So that's another motivation of a Scrum lead or the managers to attend this course. Many of these managers who have attended my course, they mentioned that, Anubhav, this course was really helpful and we were able to plan things better, and we also have now more respect in the team as compared to the last time, because in the Scrum meeting, in the team meeting, my developers do not respect me because I don't know anything. So now, since I know these things, it's much better for me to also participate in the technical discussions and understand what they are talking at a higher level. So let's talk about the phases to learn, what we will be going throughout these next 40 hours of training. So in these 4 phases, we will be completing our UI5 and Fiori development training, including OData with Web IDE. So the first phase of this course will be the foundation, We will start with a very strong foundation. As you can see this picture of a tree. A tree can only sustain and give you long-term results and fruits when the roots of the tree is strong. So we will be working on the roots in the phase 1, which includes foundation for SAP UI5, which comes with HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, and jQuery. So many of you come from ABAP background or PW background, or maybe from Portal background or BSP background, have no clue about what this JavaScript is all about. And we always got probably afraid of the word Java as an ABAP developer. We don't want to switch to the Java-based technology. So in that case, this is very, very helpful. Because we will be covering JavaScript as part of this course. So you don't have to learn JavaScript before you attend this course. As I mentioned, zero prerequisite. We will cover JavaScript as part of this course. Now, the second important thing to understand, Java and JavaScript both are different. They are not same. They are both different in their design, in their concept, and in their usage. So there is no Java required for this course. We need JavaScript, and JavaScript, only the name is same Java, but both of them are different. And we will be learning this technology as part of this course itself from the scratch. So zero prerequisite to learn SAP UI5 and Fiori for those who come from ABAP background or BW background, or maybe from Portal or BSP or WebIDE background. Zero prerequisite. Even a fresher pass out from a college can understand and learn SAP UI5 with my course. Now the next one comes is learning the core concepts of UI5, the phase 2, where we will talk about MVC architecture, model view controller. We will learn about tooling, how to install and set up our development tool. And guess what? This development tool is available in the trial mode for free. You can download and install it in your local computer, the development tool, so-called Web IDE. Why it's called Web IDE? Because it's a web-based development tool, web-based integrated development environment. So this is the tool we will be using throughout this course, and this is free. So I will show you how to download Web IDE for as a single trial or single developer usage. It's a trial version which is free. So we'll learn that, we'll set up that as part of this course. From the scratch, downloading, installation, everything I will cover it. And then we will start with the development of UI5 framework with the core concepts of UI5. That leads to another strong foundation for your tree to go. And then your tree will start growing here. You can see, and we will move towards SAP Fiori UX development, where we learn about what are all the Fiori UX guidelines, what is the difference between UI5 and Fiori. We will cover most of these interview questions which may come up when you are attending interview as a fresher. Probably you can go ahead and expect these questions in the interview, and then I will also let you know how to frame the right and correct precise answers for these interview questions. So it'll also, together with the classes, together with the course, you will automatically get prepared for the interview also. So now we will understand here the guidelines and the standard experience to build like standard. So when you build a Fiori application, which is a custom Fiori app, you would make sure that your app will no less look like a standard. So it should look like a standard Fiori app, and that's when your managers, your company, your teammates are going to impress with you, because you are building something which looks absolutely like standard Fiori applications which SAP is delivering. Then the last phase is the OData development. Many of you were wondering that how can we expose our ERP data or our S4 HANA data. Maybe, for example, my table, MARA table, materials table, I want to expose the data out of my ECC system or my S4 system from the MAD doc. How do I do that? So for that purpose, we have concepts of OData service, so-called Open Data Protocol. So we will be covering the OData development and integration with Fiori as part of this course, together with the core launchpad concepts, how to deliver and develop your application to the end user via the transport to the quality and production system, and deploy this on the Fiori launchpad where they can access this application from the scratch. So this will be the phases of learning throughout this course. So now let's look at a quick course overview. What will you be achieving in next 40 hours in this course? So you will be able to design using the core concepts and the best practices your Fiori application from the scratch. You will be able to develop using UI5 framework, understanding the framework end to end, with the latest tools available in the market. You will be able to integrate your applications with the backend system and perform all the varieties of create, read, update, delete operations on ECC system. And you will be able to deploy your application finally to deliver to the end user standard experience, a standard user experience with Fiori user experience. And then this will be a real-time end-to-end Fiori application which you will be shipping to your end user. So this will be in a nutshell what we will be learning in next 40 hours right from the scratch. As I mentioned multiple times, there is zero prerequisite for you to learn this course and subscribe this course. Any ABAP developer or even a college fresher can subscribe and learn SAP UI5 pretty easily. Don't be afraid of word Java, because I understand clearly as a ABAP developer, you have a very painful experience, and many of you are not willing to learn UI5 just because there is a word called Java. So don't worry about that. We will learn JavaScript as part of this course, and you will be equipped to become a UI5 developer easily. So let's get started with this demo. So what we will be seeing in a demo now today. So in the demo session, I will just go ahead and create a very simple UI5 application at front of you. And this UI5 application, we will be just running it in our local development tool. So now let's talk about how any application works typically, right? So typically whenever you have an application, how to design an application. All right. Whenever you design any program in your life, no matter which programming language you've used, how did you do that? Your first program of your life, how did you do that? What are all the steps you followed to achieve that? The step number one was you would have done some kind of development tool. So there was always a prerequisite to design something was that you need to have a development tool. Right. This is step number one. If you do not have the development tool, where will you write your code? Where will you compile your code, and how do you execute your code? So this is step number one. Even you start learning first step of programming, for example, C programming, you had a C compiler installed in your computer, right? So that's what called prerequisite. The step number one, you need to have the development tool, guys. So now in our case, so for example, if you are developing an ABAP program, your development tool was you were using SAP GUI with SE80 transaction code, right? This is what you were doing with SAP ABAP application layer, so-called your basis. This is what you were doing, guys, right, in as part of the prerequisite. But when it comes to developing a UI5 application, we have two different tools of choice. One is Eclipse, but nobody use Eclipse these days. The latest tool in the market which everybody use is so-called SAP WebIDE. Okay, now SAP WebIDE is also available in a trial mode for a single developer. Okay, it's available for a single developer in a trial mode actually, where you can download and run it in your local machine for free. Yes, so we will learn this installation as part of our course itself. So don't worry about if you don't have SAP WebIDE already with you, or you never experienced how does it look like, how to start, how to download, how to install, how to run. Don't worry, we will cover this as part of our course. In this demo session, I will not be covering this, but I will just show you that what if you already have WebIDE installed, how can you develop? So I'm assuming that that this is something which we already have in a system, and with that assumption, with that precondition, I will be starting the demo. Of course, you can assume this at this point of time. Later on, when we move to the section number 2, we will learn how to set up this development environment in our local machine. Now, the next subsequent steps to develop whenever, imagine just you're writing a C program or an ABAP program, the very first step which comes is initialization, right? You got to initialize something. For example, if you're writing an ABAP program, you will say report, and then you will say your program name. So you are basically writing an initialization where you're telling the driver program in ABAP to start executing this ABAP program from here. Or maybe in the C programming, if you remember, we used to use studio.h, include studio.h. So basically bringing a preprocessor directive over here to load the library functions in C programming. So any programming language, whenever you start program, whenever we start writing something, you always make sure that we do some kind of initialization. So that is step number one when we do initialization. Now, after the initialization is complete, you will go ahead and declare your data variables, right? Declare variables, program variables. Okay, this is the step number two. You will be declaring all your program variables as part of your program. Step number two. In the step number three, after you declare your program variables, you will start writing some kind of application logic. Okay, this application logic also includes receiving data from the user. So you will probably write some application logic plus some UI logic, which includes some logic to fetch the data from the user interface. So basically design your user interface. You ask user to click on some button, or you showcase an input field to the user. So this is all your application plus UI logic you will be writing. And in the next subsequent step, you will just go ahead and display some output to the user, and finally you will write your cleanup code. You will clean up some objects which you created, so all that you will clean it up. So these are all easy 5 steps to develop any program in the life, right? Any program, be it C, Java, .NET, Python, or Perl, Ruby, Linux, any programming, VB, ABAP, any programming you used in life, these were the steps you would have followed, more or less the same steps in different ways to write any program. So now if I want to write SAP UI5 application for the first time, I will also use exactly these same steps also. So when it comes to initialization, we need to first of all initialize our UI5 framework. So let's understand what is SAP UI5 and why am I saying it is a framework, and what is a framework all about. So before we move on writing an application, let's understand basics of SAP UI5. So basics of SAP UI5. What UI5 is all about and why it is getting so popular in the market, that every ABAP developer today is in essence to know SAP UI5. So SAP UI5 is a framework. Okay. Now, which can be used to develop responsive web applications. It is based on open standards like HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript. It is used to develop enterprise grade applications. So this is what, in a nutshell, SAP UI5 is all about. Now, understand the first statement. In the first statement, we see a word called framework. This is an interesting word to understand. So SAP UI5 is a framework which can be used to develop responsive. This is another word which is more interesting. So let's focus on these two words and understand how and why these words are so important for us. So let's understand what is framework first. So framework is nothing but collection of libraries. We reuse these libraries to develop something on top of it. Okay, so you do not reinvent the whole wheel, rather you will reuse something which is already invented, something which already exists. You are just reusing it and you are developing on top of it. So that's why it's called framework, because it provides you collection of libraries. Now the word library is confusing, so let's understand what is a library. So what is a library? You must have visited any library, guys, in your life, in your college days. Library is a collection of books. But in context of programming, a library is a collection of classes. Yeah. Oops, classes, exactly. It's a collection of classes. So these classes are grouped together to make a library. Simple. And now what is a class? Let's go to the lowest level. A class is nothing but collection of attributes, methods, so-called functions. You can also call them functions, behaviors, attributes, events, and associations. Its relationship with other classes. So that's what a class is all about, right? When you create an object of a class, when you instantiate a class, you get an object, right? So now let's understand what is UI5 here is. UI5 is a collection of these libraries, and these libraries has so many classes. Now, for example, if I take an example here, in SAP UI5, we have a class, or we have a library called SAP.m. This is a library. M stands for mobile. And this library contains class called button. Awesome. So button is a class. I want to create a button. It is a class inside this library SAP.m. SAP.m is a library which is part of the UI5 framework. And now we have a button which is actually a class which contains the properties for the button. For example, text property to display label for the button. So this is what exactly the framework means. Now go to the second word, responsive. What does this means? It's another interesting word here, responsive. So responsive means an application which adapt itself based on device. Yes, exactly. So this is the world of devices. You have mobile, you have tablets, you have desktops, you have wide variety of devices out there. Now, these wide variety of devices, you can actually choose based on your need, and you want to make sure that an application which you develop, that application works on all the devices. So you cannot afford to write different code every time for every device. You want to write one code which supports all devices, right? Which make your application enabled for mobile and tablet also. And that's where the USP of UI5 comes over the classical ABAP technologies like WebDin Pro. SAP UI5 is a responsive web, it used to design responsive web applications. So which means an application which is designed using UI5, it works beautifully with mobile and tablet automatically. It adapts itself automatically, guys. That's the beauty of a responsive web design or web application which adapts itself automatically according to the device. So UI5 is exactly like that. So what is the evolution of SAP UI5? How it has come? The old technology evolution of SAP UI. So the very first time, old days, we used to use something called dialog programming. Using ABAP, we used to use dialog programs, writing PBO and PAI blocks. You remember those PBO blocks, process before output and process after input blocks. So this was our classical ABAP programming using reports and writing dialog programs, module pools. This was the first UI technology we had when it comes to learning SAP. The second step was SAP web-based technologies. So you can now develop browser-based applications using SAP. In this space, we used to have two participants or two candidates who were helping us to develop these web-based applications. One was WebDin Pro ABAP, or sorry, WebDin Pro. It was available in two flavors, ABAP or Java, based on the technology you like. You can choose. And then there was a BSP, Business Server Pages, which is mainly used for SAP CRM products. So this was actually the two technologies which we were using, maybe I would say down the line 5 to 6 years ago. And then SAP introduced the new UI technology, so-called SAP UI5 with Fiori user experience. So SAP UI5 with Fiori UX. Yeah. So this is what was introduced somewhere around 2013-14. So that's when they introduced this. And since then, it has become the most popular programming or the most popular UI technology. So now for your information, there is no new development happening on the WebDin Pro and Dialog program. Every company is now developing on SAP UI5 and Fiori. So if there is any new application which needs to be developed, it has to be on UI5 and Fiori with Fiori user experience. So this is what is happening in industry also. Every company started adopting this pattern because even in SAP world, if you see the latest ERP is SAP S4 HANA, and the default user experience for SAP S4 HANA is SAP Fiori user experience. So that is the reason why it is essential for any developer to learn SAP UI5 in Fiori. So with that, let's quickly move on to the system and create our first UI5 program today. As I mentioned, the steps to develop any program, we have to do initialization, which means now it is a time that we go and call this UI5 framework to load in our browser. So what I will be doing, I will not be teaching in this demo session. It's just a demo session. I will not focus on set up an installation of Web IDE tool here. Of course, in our next class, which is planned tomorrow, I will show you how to set up this tool because that will be important for you to get started with. So right now, I'm assuming it's there in your system. Considering it's a demo class, I will just go ahead to the system and we'll develop a very simple UI5 application at front of you as part of this demo. So I'll go back here and you can see my Web IDE tool. This is how it looks like. It's already running out there. I just quickly go and connect to this tool. Don't worry. I will show you in the next class how to set up this development tool in your local environment. Okay. This is what I will be covering as part of our next session actually. So those who are willing to also uh, install this right away even before our next session happens, you can also do that very easily. You just have to go to YouTube and then you have to just go to my channel. So just subscribe or check my channel with the name called Anubhav Oberoy on the YouTube, and you will find my channel also on the YouTube. So you can go to YouTube and search for Anubhav Oberoy, and there you will find my channel Anubhav Oberoy out there. And you can see this is a free learning university for many of you who have attended my courses. It will help you to actually get a lot of insights on advanced topics on UI5, ABAP on HANA, S4 HANA, and stuff like that. So you can go to the videos out there, and you can see so many free videos here on this channel. It's a big one of the most powerful learning university we are creating here at Anubhav Trainings to make you aware of these latest and greatest concepts which are coming new into the market. So of course, the complete training is not published on the YouTube. The training is, of course, not published there on the YouTube, but you can find some of these good, powerful videos out there. So now here only we have a video of how to set up or getting started with the so-called Web IDE. Yeah, so that particular setup video is already there here on YouTube. Let me just quickly search for that. So it is getting started. Yeah, so you see getting started with SAP Web IDE. So this is one video you can watch before our next class itself if you're willing to do it, like more in advance. But don't panic. In our next class, we will anyway see how to set up that. Okay. So let's come back. So this is our development tool, so called Web IDE. Then just say, okay, it's just having some plugin issue. And let me just say, okay. And just quickly ask it to log in again. Let me just refresh my page and log in again. So I just refresh and connect again to the Web IDE. So this is running in my local machine. There is zero internet connection required to run this. Even I disconnect from the internet, system would still load this tool in my local machine. Okay, so that's the beauty of Web IDE Personal Edition. And let me just close all these open projects which I have it here. They are like previous batch projects which we developed. And now maybe what I will do is I will create a new project. So let's start with a new folder. So I say new, folder, and let's give the name to this as, let's say, Anubhav demo, and I'll say okay. And you can see Anubhav demo folder is created. It's empty. When I open, there's nothing inside. This is my project, guys. So if you look at this tool, the development tool, you may feel like it's like your SC80 transaction code, which you use in SAP ABAP, right? So you have on the left-hand side a pane where you can see all the projects and artifacts. And on the right-hand side, you will see the place where you can write your code, all your code and programs and everything. You will write it on the right side. So this is exactly like SC80 like environment. And now I can come here and just click on right click and new, and I start with a file. And let's give some file name. I will say anubhav.html as my file. So you always start a file with .html extensions because this application is going to run in the browser. And when it's going to run into the browser, we need to make sure that this application is of type HTML page. All right, .html should be the extension of this file. Say okay, and now you can see it's created out here. Now, of course, I will cover as part of my session number 3 basics of HTML, because I do not assume that you have HTML knowledge. Even you have it, no problem, we will cover that. So an HTML page, whenever you create, it has two parts. One is called header and one is called body. So let's start with an HTML document, and it has a header part. It's the brain of HTML, and then it has a body part. So this is the content address, or this content area of an HTML. Just like humans have head and body, similarly we have an HTML page which contains a header and the body. So all this is tags. Actually, we will introduce these tags in chapter number 3. We will learn it from the scratch as basics of HTML as part of this course. Okay, so let's assume that we have a header and body, and now we come to our step number 1, initialization. Okay, so what is that we're trying to initialize here? Remember, we are going to reuse this framework, this UI5 framework. We are going to reuse this, guys. So we need to initialize this framework. We need to load this framework from somewhere. So what is that somewhere? There are two possible options. Either you load this framework from your local machine, from your local computer. So either you load it from your local computer or you load it from the internet. Okay, so load it from the cloud, basically load it from the internet. These are all the two possible options to load UI5 framework as an initialization of your program. So now I will skip the step number 1 for chapter number 5, but I will switch to the option number 2, which is easy for me to show at this point of time from the cloud. So now you need an address of a website from where I'm going to load it, right? So you need a web address to load SAP UI5 framework as part of your page. Now, before even we load this, let me just quickly go ahead and now type here, welcome to anubhavtrainings.com. This is what I'm just typing in the body, and I'm going to run this. So let's execute, and you see it prints me this program, hello world kind of program, welcome to anubhavtrainings.com. Awesome. So now maybe I will run this for simplicity in a different browser window. So let me create another browser window and I will execute it here. Oh wow, you can see my same result is coming up. So as you saw, the user can only see the content which you keep it in the body of HTML. So you have to keep the content in the body of HTML. Now I will replace this, or maybe I will just also add another content. I add a div tag. Div stands for division tag, and just keep an ID, let's say spidey. Okay, so I'm just keeping an element with an ID called spidey. Of course, this element itself doesn't have a footprint on the UI. Basically, this element I'm creating as a container. Okay, this is going to be a container. Now this container, what we are going to do, we're going to pour inside this container a UI5 control later point of time. Okay, so we are going to add a UI5 control inside this container. So this is a container actually right now which I've created. So later on I will be going ahead and adding or pouring a UI5 control as part of this container. So now I'll go back. So of course, when I run this on the right side, refresh, there's no change. It's still showing the same stuff, which is fine. Okay, no problem. But now it's time to initialize, my friends. So let's go and learn how to initialize this UI5 framework from the internet. So for that, I will go to the header, the brain. So brain has to do that. And then we will use something called a script tag here with an src property. So we have to tell system, please initialize. So this is the tag we use for initialization. Then from where to initialize? What is the source of initialization? That's what you got to enter inside this URL. If you observe carefully, I will never ever do any copy paste of code in front of you in my classes. And this is the main USP with Anubhav. We'll never do any copy paste of code. Most of the trainings which you attend, be it any kind of online training or free trainings on OpenSAP, you would observe that most of the trainers do copy paste of code. With that, they will tend to hide the skill which you need to develop uh, during the development, because anybody can copy paste the code and build a beautiful application. But what about when an issue comes? How do you investigate that issue, where the issue is coming, where it is failing, what is the reason of failure? That you will only realize at the time when you actually go ahead to the system and find out where the issue is all about. All right. So this is quite important to learn the basics, to learn from scratch. Should not do any copy paste of code. And that's what throughout this course you will see. I will not do a copy paste of code. I will write every single line of code at front of you. And I will also encourage you to write every single line of code, so you will have problems. You will see mistakes, you will do typos, you will do errors, and these mistakes will tend you to learn new things. All right, let's come here, and I'm going to add an address here to load my SAP UI5 framework. So let's part it UI5 dot ondemand.com /resources / SAP UI core.js. So basically I'm telling the system, please load this particular UI5 framework from some internet address. You can also take this URL and paste it here just to see if it is loading something. Yes, you see, it's loading some piece of code. We don't care what is written in, but as you can see, it's loading something for sure. Fine. So now this URL is correct. So it's going to load my UI5 framework as part of step 1. Now, at the same time, as I mentioned, this framework is bulky. It has so many libraries inside. Now, these libraries, you really need to go and load the libraries you really need. You don't want to overload or increase your loading time of loading everything. You want to load certain libraries which you really want to use. So I want to use only one library at this time in this demo, and that's mobile library, which I was mentioning. So I will be telling the system, please don't load everything. Please load only the library which I need. So for that, you have to say data SAP UI libs, and then you have to say library name sap.m. So I will be loading now sap.m library at this point of time. Superb, awesome. So now this is step number 1. Your initialization of program, it's complete. Very nice. Let's create program variables and also the UI logic, the UI element. So now I want to, in this demo session, create a small button on the UI. How do we achieve that? So let's write another placeholder where I can write my code. And now inside this, I will be writing all my code. So we have loaded a library, and this library contains something called a button. Okay. Now, how do I know that there is this library and there is a button inside this library? So for that, I will also take you to the first part of this URL. Let me copy the first part of this URL. And this part is called SAP UI5 SDK. SDK is full form is Software Development Kit. So I will take the first part of this URL and I will take you through there, and I just enter that URL, and watch out now what happens. So when you run this, you will observe that it will open up a beautiful website which is actually containing all the documentation which you need to develop any UI5 application. Okay, so I will go to the API reference, and now I will search for a button. And you can see here you are finding a button, and you see here C means a class. This is a class. And then you see N means namespace. This is nothing but a library. So under SAP .m library, there is a class called button class which is available. All right. So this is how you can explore. Of course, this is something covered in chapter number 12, where we'll talk about a deep dive inside this UI5 SDK, understand every single bit of it so that you can develop on your own. I will make sure that you will become self-dependent in development. You don't need any help from anybody after attending this course. All right, let's come back. So this is where you have properties, and you can see all the properties: icon property, icon first, text property for a button, very important one. We will be using it in a minute. So now I will go back and I will be creating our first button. So how do you create an object, or how do you create a variable here in this program? So in abap, how you used to create variable? In abap programming, we used to use data, lv mara or lv matner, type matnr, right? And then you use select single matner from your Mara table into variable LV Mara, something of this sort you used to use, or any other programming language for that matter. You used to write some variables and then you used to use some functionality. For example, if you come from Java world, you use var and then you say some object in Java. So you say object equals to new sap.java, or sorry, um, you use java.lang.util. So this is where you're creating an object of a class in Java. Now here we are using something called JavaScript. As I mentioned, we will cover JavaScript in chapter number 7 in detail. So there is a syntax which we have to follow. The syntax is var. Var is a keyword. V is small. And then you have to use your object name, whatever object you are creating, equals to, then you use new keyword to create a new object actually. Then you will use library name dot class name in this library. What is a class in this library? Parenthesis, and then you will write here the ID of the control. So whatever you control you're creating, it's ID. If you want to give an ID, it's your choice. And then curly braces, and under this you will be writing the property name, colon property value, semicolon property name, colon property value, semicolon, and so on. So you keep writing property name value, property name value, property name value. So this is how you will, this is the syntax for creating any control in SAP UI5. So let's use this syntax then. So I'm going to go back and create a new button object in front of you. So I'll go back and I'll say var o spiderman equals to new sap.m.button. So what is a Spider-Man? It's basically nothing but your object name. You can keep your name also. You can say, let's say Stephen. Yeah. You can keep, let's say Zara. So it's your choice. You can keep any name. This is just a variable you're declaring. But remember, the library name is this one, which we loaded as you can see above. So this is the library and this is the class inside the library. I just showed you. Where can you find that? In UI5 SDK. And now use parenthesis and just keep some ID to this control. I say ID new button or ID button. So you can give some ID, that's okay. Comma, curly braces, and now inside this curly braces you got to write all the properties. You also saw just now the list of properties available for the button class. So this is our button class, and we have a properties, let's say text property for example, which is going to get the label for the button, so the text of the button. So it's of type string, which you can pass here. So let's go back and I'll say text property, and I will say click me. Yeah. Just a button I've created called click me. The button name is Zara. Now guys, you remember just about a minute ago I told you one important thing, that we are creating a container, and this container is now going to get this button actually. So remember the basic rule of the game here is anything which is part of the body is what user can see. So user eyes can see only what is part of the body. User cannot see what is here in the header, right? Just like people can only see your body, they cannot see or your heart. They cannot see what's going in your mind, right? Similarly, in this case of HTML, people can only see, or the users can only see what's in the body. They can't see what's in the header. So that's the reason now we created a variable which is a type object of button, but this is not visible to the user yet. You have to now take Zara and you have to tell the Zara, please go and sit inside the body. And where will it go and sit inside the body? It will go and sit inside this, in this element called Spidey. So Zara will go and sit inside this Spidey So this is how we are linking it. So now at runtime, when you execute this, Zara is going to get created and she will go and sit inside the Spidey. So that's how your button will get created. So let's go ahead and save this. And I'm going to go back to my second session where I'm running it already. And let's refresh. And now, wow, voila, there you go. You can see your button is appearing right here on the screen. But hey, it doesn't look like a Fiori like UI. It doesn't look like a Fiori experience. Many of you would have encountered or seen Fiori apps. Of course, you have seen many of them, but it doesn't look like a Fiori experience. Of course, because we have not yet loaded something called theme. So experience comes with something called theme. So for example, I visited a shopping mall during Christmas time, and they have applied a Christmas theme out there. So there are a lot of candies hanging out there. There are a lot of candles everywhere. They have kept all this decoration with Christmas trees out there around it. They would put a lot of lights around their shops. So this is how you get a theme of Christmas. You get a feel of that Christmas feeling, right? Similarly, in a program like this, you also need to apply some kind of theming to get that experience what you're looking. So Fiori is all about user experience. So that's where we will now add that Fiori element out here to add that or bring that experience. The first step to do that is you got to load the theme. So data SAP UI theme, and I will load SAP Belize. This is the latest SAP Fiori theme. Actually, with Fiori 3.0, there is Fiori 3 theme, but I will be using this one because currently use most of them in the market today. The Bleeze theme is the standard one which is used. Before the Bleeze theme, we used to use SAP Blue Crystal theme. So now they're almost using Bleeze theme everywhere. So I'll use the Bleeze theme. And now I just go to the body and I will add a parameter here, so say called classification, and name it as SAP UI body. So the whole page, whole of my page body should be following this SAP UI body, and this SAP UI body is predefined variable inside the theme. So this is already done within the theme. You will understand this more in detail in our chapter number 5, where we will learn CSS in detail. Okay, we learn internal, external, and inline CSS. That time we'll understand this more. But right now, understand I just loaded the theme, and I've just marked my body into this theme. So I'm just telling, please load this theme on whole of my page body. Now I just save this, go back and reload, and you watch out, the experience is now different. You see now your background color, your button theming is changed. Maybe I will make it blue crystal to show you more. Save it and come back, refresh, and now you see, oh wow, you can see a Fiori like experience now, which is a Fiori like theme. So you can just also minimize like a mobile, and you see this is your button with Fiori like theme, guys. So this is what influenced the user experience, your theming experience, thanks to SAP Fiori UX to bring this theming experience with SAP UI5 applications. All right, now that's it for the demo. Maybe I'll just also add a logic to click to show some output to the user. So the press is the event name for the button, and this is also available out there in the SDK. So if when you go to the SDK, you will also see here event for the button, and you would find that there is a press event. When user press on the button, what happens? That is what you are seeing out there. So on press, I want to call a function, and I'll say, please throw me an output. This is an output function out there. So I say, welcome to the life of UI developer. So soon you guys will become an expert on UI development. So that's what I'm writing here in a function. I'm just going to throw some output to the end user in form of an pop-up. So this function, alert function, is going to bring you a pop-up actually. So I'll just save it, come back and refresh our page. And let's hit the button, and we see what. Let's click. Oh, there you go. Nice. Welcome to the life of a UI developer. So that's your code. With that, I'm done with this demo session. So thank you so much for all your time and patience attending this demo session. If you're willing to join our courses on SAP UI5, Fiori, Gateway, Launchpad, ABAP on HANA, S4 HANA, feel free to contact us on anubhavtrainings.com. You can also drop us an email on install.abap@gmail.com. Please do subscribe this channel for more interesting videos like this, and I will see you in our next session, which is planned tomorrow. Thank you so much. Do let me know your feedbacks, comments in the below box. And with that, Anubhav signing out. Have a nice day and goodbye.